We say what they can't radio.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, everybody, to Melanated Universe.
You and I verse, that is.
Yes, we're here today, and we are glad that we can be here with you, and you can be here with us.
Absolutely.
And it finally warmed up here in New York, yeah, I'm not complaining. I'd rather the heat than the cold any day.
So how hot does it feel to you? Because I told somebody it felt like 80, and she told me that I have pregnant heat. So
Yeah, I think that might be a little pregnant heat.
it don't feel like 80?
No,
You're like, no.
It feels like a real comfortable. Not comfortable. It feels like a humid 74-ish.
Really? Wow. It feels like it's like 80, 85.
Oh no, you gonna know when it's 80. Yes, indeed.
You know, that's so funny how that works.
What's that?
Like the fact that I'm pregnant, like now I can measure my thermostat to everybody else's based on, like to me it feels like 80, to you it feels like 75.
And yeah, I guess you got an extra 10 degrees in the belly or something. But yeah, so hey, we had an awesome week.
Yes.
From last week, a lot has happened. First, let's start off with our business shout outs.
Yes. So our first business shout out is Natural Blends.
Yes.
It's of course it's a vegan restaurant.
In Brooklyn.
Yes, in Brooklyn. There's two locations. I think one is in Prospect Heights.
Not what,
Prospect
the area
Heights.
where we went to? That's
No,
not
no,
where
no.
we went to.
There's one in Prospect Heights near Lefferts Garden, and then there's another one in Bed-Stuy
Right, the one in Bed-Stuy.
on Malcolm X
Right.
and Halsey. Malcolm X and Halsey.
If you Google it, you will find it.
Yeah, Natural Blends. Like, oh my gosh.
Food
They
slamming.
what?
Like, I'm not gonna lie, I've been like a part-time vegan,
Part-time?
but the way that they cook their food,
It was
I can be a full-time.
Yeah.
vegan because
They had what is it that you had? I had
did I have curry goat or something?
no curry chicken.
Curry chicken.
You had curry chicken.
Curry chicken.
And I had jerk chicken.
Wait, I had vegan curry chicken. Let that sink in. Yeah.
And I had the jerk. Oh my god, with brown rice and peas, with some callaloo. Oh,
Listen, that thing tasted like the real deal. I mean,
it was good. Yeah.
yeah.
But my favorite dish from them is the citrus spare ribs. That's remember I had it the other day and I asked you to taste it.
I tasted that too.
Oh my god,
It tastes like it came off the grill. I don't understand.
that thing tastes
Like-
so good.
It's crazy. Oh, shout out to a longtime family friend we bumped into right in front of the restaurant. June.
Oh yeah.
Yes, June. It was great seeing you. I knew you probably didn't know I was going to shout you out, but good seeing you. And I hope to see you again soon, all right? June knew me from the time I was like a little boy.
A wee little boy.
Yeah, yeah.
Back in yard.
Hey. She knew me from a long time.
Okay, so what was the other business that you wanted to shout out?
I want to give a shout out to Gaudi. Gaudi was here last show? Yeah, I believe it was last show.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes. Funny how we met him.
yeah.
So he does branding
Yes, he does.
and social media.
Well, I guess you can tell it better than I can. He will bring.
Well, I can tell the part of him that I know because remember you knew him before I did.
Well, I didn't.
You knew of him.
Right. We met, but it's funny because we have two different memories of how we met. I thought we met at the father-daughter dance, and I believe he thinks we met
As a diva event.
a diva event. But either way, we met, and I started following him about a year and a half ago, and yeah, he's been on the move. You know, he makes tailored stuff. You know. Bow ties and all different types of things. I'm not going to do it a disservice, but he's very versatile in his craft. And he's also, like the missus said, he specializes in branding.
Yeah, he's a photographer. I think he says he does like weddings, especially. But he takes great photos. So our last guest that was on the show, Star Celebrity Cheesecakes. They were his client. So he was here, I guess, like taking
Well,
like
I don't
footage.
know if we were supposed to say that. Sorry.
footage of them.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up meeting
Yes.
him. So I saw his work and I was like, oh, yeah, I would love to.
And I was already familiar with his profile, and it was a green light right away. He just finished making our first commercial.
Yes, our
for
first Hold That Fun
All That
commercial.
Fun, and he's doing an amazing job. So
Yeah.
check him out. Supporting Black business.
Yeah, I
Right.
think it's GAUDI.
And you know what?
I believe that's his name.
I am gonna spell it right.
his-
That's what I will do.
I think that's his his name on IG. GAUDI.
I am gonna spell it absolutely. Give me one sec.
But in the meantime, he came out this past week and he took pictures of our event and he, like I said, he did an amazing job. He was able to capture all those moments that I'm not able to do myself because I'm not good at taking pictures and running an event at the same time. I usually have to do one or the other. So, we hired Gotti and he's, like I said, like Dwayne said, he's been really good at what he does. So I definitely recommend him to anybody, So, actually some of the people that I know already started asking about him. So I've been able to, refer his business to them so that they can utilize him. Because, we always talk about supporting Black or melanated businesses. So, we have to make sure that we do that.
And if you want to look him up on IG, the correct spelling is GAUD as in dog I. All right, Gordy. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But yeah, that's what it is. And I just remembered also, we're gonna share that exciting news about the comment. All right, she don't remember right now. But last show. Well, actually, not last show. It was about 2 shows ago. We did a show about an inspirational show, and we we referenced a couple of speakers that we followed along our journey, becoming more successful entrepreneurs and in life, period. And one of the people that we mentioned was Mario Arizon. And he was the gentleman. If you go back to a couple shows ago with the motivational show, you'll see he talked about the golf club story. Mm-hmm. And Mario Arizon commented on Melanated Universe.
Yeah, I believe it was episode 8.
And he I remember a bunch of fire symbols, which is always great. And what did he say?
I think he just said thank you.
Thank you.
Just thank you for referencing him and his I don't want to say his video, but his speech.
Yes.
Yeah.
But family, melanated family. Like, we're honored that we have people like Mario Arizon joining the Melanated Universe family,
Correct.
watching our show. And this is just a taste of what's to come. These are exciting times. Also, we are also on TuneIn. TuneIn. Am I saying that right?
I don't know.
Am I saying that right? TuneIn. TUNEIN. TuneIn, okay? It's where I had been listening to my podcast for many years, and it's huge. I don't know if it's the hugest, but it is a very huge media outlet, and we are now we're now available because We Say What They Can't is now available on TuneIn. So Melanated Universe is also available on TuneIn. Check us out. Check out the rest of the shows on the station. This is great material, and Black media. Black media is very important. We don't always have to agree.
TuneIn is Black owned, correct?
I'm not sure. If TuneIn itself is Black owned, but what I speak of is our voices, our shows, Black media having a presence and delivering information through our perspective,
Right.
Perspective that we can relate to and that we can also use to benefit ourselves,
Right.
and those around us. All right, so check us out on TuneIn. And on that note,
Yes.
this is going to be one of those shows.
So today's topic is going to be very controversial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going on. We try to stay away from controversy for the most part.
Right.
On Melanated Universe, because we focus on what benefits
The community.
what can help. We focus on the solutions and not so much on the problems. But I see in this topic we have a discussion that is definitely necessary to be had in the Black community, and that
We-
topic is abortion.
And that's because you believe that it directly can correlate to supporting or hurting the Black community.
Yes. What I would like to do today, because the reason why we decided to talk about this, because if you've been watching the news, mainstream media has put out their talking points on what has happened in Alabama with the new abortion law that pretty much outlaws all form of abortion. Now, what I am not doing here today is I am not here to talk down to you. I am not here to belittle you. I'm not here to point a finger at you. If you had or had not partaken in an abortion, I'm not viewing that right now. I'm not here to judge you, right? That's not what this is about. This is about recognizing that it isn't an important topic that we need to discuss in our community. And the males and the females in our community tend to have vastly different viewpoints on this subject. And I won't be polarized one way or another to fit into the boxes that the mainstream has presented to us so that we can divide ourselves even further, right? And that's not what this is. This conversation is supposed to introduce constructive information that maybe can offer you, regardless if you're male or female, if you listen with an open mind, to kind of a chance to identify with what the opposite sex is going through and how they view it. And not to say it's right or wrong, just to identify, because we have to start identifying, finding common ground somewhere.
Yeah,
so
we
that
have
we can
to start actively talking about
Correct.
the problem and offering solutions.
Correct. So, this, like I said, this is not us preaching to you. This is not that. But even though me and my wife, we've been together forever, during this discussion recently, we had vastly different opinions, right? So, all right. So on that note, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. So, what are your? Well, I guess bring them up to speed on why we chose this topic.
Well, I like I said before, I chose the topic
In reference to,
because my perspective is that we need to have a conversation about family, right? It's very easy to look at everything and through the lens of me. That's the easiest thing to do if you have children or someone who has children. A toddler is in that mindset where it's me, right? As you get a little bit older, you have to reach a point where the vision becomes bigger than you, right? And the only way that we can grow, thrive, and create a community that we would all feel great to live in, and a community that can support, protect us, and offer us an opportunity to grow generational wealth. Community has to start at family. And family starts at interpersonal relationships between men and women. And for a long time, I've had this discussion with a lot of my male friends pertaining to abortion, in the sense that I believe, and this is my personal belief, feel free to comment if you don't believe what I believe. That's okay. I'm not forcing you to. But I believe that because two adults, and you got to start at the beginning, two adults made a decision to have sex, right? Now, I know that there are exceptions to the rule, right? There are exceptions, but that is a very small percent in comparison to the majority. So a common tactic is by the powers that be. They would like to focus on those rare exceptions and have us fighting over the exception instead of the majority, right? Let's talk about the majority. Majority of pregnancies come from consensual sex.
right, I agree that.
And if the sex is consensual, at that moment, the male and the female, in my opinion, have entered into a contract of sorts, an agreement, right? And if there is a baby that comes from that, regardless if it was wanted or unwanted, I believe both parties should have a say-so. If an abortion is on the table, if there's a discussion to be had about abortion, I believe both parties should consent, right? Furthermore, I also believe that if one party does not want to, if one party wants to abort, it doesn't matter if it's the woman or the male, right? If one party wants to abort and the other party does not want to abort, in that instance, I believe there should be an option of, I guess, giving up those parental rights, because that parent did not agree, Now, this is going to trigger a lot of emotions with people. I know it is. But let's talk about the bigger picture, not me. Us as a community. And us as a community is not just about you. If two people get together and they grow food, they plant the seeds, they water it, they do all they need to do, they harvest. And then when it comes time to bake the bread, one person has the oven. Is it true that the person that has the oven can, while the bread is baking, can say, you know what? I just want to throw all this bread away and be damned what you think, because this is my oven. It sounds silly, but if I deliver it to you like that, you understand it. You receive it because it makes sense. You don't have to fight to understand that principle. But what we have going on now is a situation where the powers that be realize the best way to cause disunity in our community is to create a friction between males and females. They have to first destroy the black family. This isn't new. COINTELPRO, do your research. They have to destroy the black family at its basic units, the man and the woman. So we have to give one privilege and the other one take privilege away. And the thing about privilege is when we experience privilege, we don't like to give it up. It's okay if as long as I don't have to give up my privilege. And I think a big problem and a big discussion we have to have is that for a long time, the lopsided privilege of the law being on your side was on the side of the melanated woman. And at the same time, there was there was a promoting of no responsibility. You don't have to be responsible for your actions. And that is a toxic combination, because let's talk about a child. If a child is told you can do whatever you want and there are no consequences, well, what type of a child do you have? Can that child function around other people? Will people want to function around that child?
So, I see where you're coming from. And, I do agree that, as a community, we have to start holding both parties more accountable for the actions of having sex.
Yes.
What I do not agree with, I think you said it was in Alabama the law was passed, right?
Yes.
I do not agree with the government coming in, making a demand saying that if a woman has an abortion, it's illegal for a woman to have an abortion. I do not agree with that, because in that instance, I feel like the government shouldn't have a say-so over what happens in a family, so to speak. I think you and I were talking earlier about creating a community where we govern ourselves.
Yes.
So that the government can't come in and dictate that. Because, yes, there are some instances where, for instance, let's say both parties agreed that they didn't want to have a child.
Right.
While having sex, one of those parties might have tampered with the birth control. Mm-hmm. And then the woman ends up getting pregnant. Mm-hmm. What do you do then? If one person wants it, one person don't. They talked about it, and maybe in the beginning they both agreed, no, I don't want to have it. But then maybe later on somebody changed their mind and they decided to tamper with the birth control, and now this person is pregnant. Like, what do you do then? you know, it's like it's a gray area. It's very sticky area that is hard to
Well, because I
to
live,
navigate through.
you know, you make a great point. You make a great point, and let me start off by saying I agree with you 100% that the government should not have powers to dictate how we function as a family. You know, what goes on inside of our home. I agree with that 100%. So that's common ground. In terms of, like I said, the exceptions, these rare instances. When I say rare, compared to the majority, right? That's a rare instance where someone would do that. You've heard of males doing it. You've heard of females doing it, right? Mm-hmm. Now, there's still the pregnancy that has to take place, and in a situation like that, right? If one party, let's say the male was the one that poked the hole, and the female says, you know what? I don't want to have a child. I don't want to have the responsibility of
Right.
having a child. See, I believe from the time you consented to sex, you accepted the risk that that was a possibility. And see, that's the uncomfortable conversation that we got to have. Why aren't we accepting responsibility? Even if someone else had a part to play in that, at some point you made the decision, and it may have been bad judgment at the time, I understand, that person was trustworthy, right? So there's no such thing as a perfect life. In life, things are going to happen that you did not plan for, and it's not always going to be pleasant, okay? But when you look at it again, you know, that unborn child, that's already in creation now, right? Who's speaking up for that child? You know, if you think about the fact that we could have had hundreds of millions more black people on the planet today helping our cause that are not here in the last 40, well, actually the last 50 years because of abortion. And that's just in that space of time. You know, like, we got to start thinking bigger. The problem is not in my opinion, not the right to have an abortion. It's why is it coming to that?
Right. Why are we having reckless sex?
And why is there a reckless mindset that, you know what, this is my body the baby is in,
Right.
so I make all the decisions.
I mean, I'm not a man, but I can only imagine if my girlfriend or wife or just some woman that I was having casual sex with ended up pregnant, and I'm excited, like, yeah, I'm about to be a father. And then she comes and she's like, well, I'm not keeping it. Like, I could only imagine how I would feel. Like, wow, like, and then you have no say so. So I do, you know, sympathize, and I can't say identify, but I do sympathize with men in that aspect that they have right now. You know, men have no say so over what happens before a baby is born.
Now,
When technically that's their child as well.
Correct.
But then the catch-22 is the woman, let's say the man doesn't want that child. And then the woman decides, well, I'm going to have an abortion. And he doesn't have, the man doesn't want the child, but the woman does.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she has the baby, and he's responsible for child support now.
Now, see, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was just about to touch on that. I've been watching, I follow Dr. Boyce Watkins, and he posted recently. He reposted a post by D.L. Hughley, and it was along those lines. Mm-hmm. Whereas he made a very inflammatory comment, and it's only inflammatory because people do not want to accept the implications of what he's saying. Women are not okay with the government telling them when and where they can have a child, but they're okay with them telling men when and where to have a child.
That's true.
Do you see a problem with that dynamic?
Right.
Right? Because who is your loyalty to?
Right.
You know, are you loyal to the black man and the black family, or are you loyal to Uncle Sam? Who are you going to as the definitive end all?
I think sometimes a lot of this stems from maybe broken homes or dysfunctional relationships where men and women don't have respect for each other in that aspect.
I agree. That is
Yeah, I see it as a
The-
lack of respect for each other.
Yeah, that's one of the root problems.
Right.
And it's taught in our culture. It's consistently reinforced in our culture
Right.
not to respect each other.
Right. To disregard the feelings or the thoughts or opinions of each other and do whatever is best for you.
Like I saw a meme going around the internet. It's something along the lines of reasons why a man should be concerned why a woman, or why a man should have a say so, and why a woman should have an abortion. And basically, the point, all the answers was not your business, not your business, not your business. Whereas like I said, that is a very dysfunctional and a destructive mindset if you're trying to build community. Now, if you want nothing to do with the black community and you have a fantasy of moving off into White Landia someday, right? Then I could understand why you behave that way. But if that's not your motive, if you do have a desire to find someone that looks like you or your father, you know, or your brothers, and you wanna and you want that to be a healthy relationship in a healthy environment, we got to make some changes.
Right.
We got to recognize where this dysfunctional programming was introduced and what it's doing to us, right? Because as a man, I love being the man to my wife. I love that. You know, she allows me to be the man. You know, and it wasn't always that way. Initially, it was a lot of fighting and back and forth, and she was just like, no, you know how that goes, right?
But why? Don't try to only put it on me.
But see,
because we didn't establish that from the beginning.
right. And one of the things that we had to step out the box and look at ourselves was what's causing that.
Right.
What's that behavior coming from? See, if you grew up without a father in the home, you may have a hard time with functioning with a male. If you grew up without a father in the home and a mother constantly berating males, your parents become the voice of your subconscious, your conscience. So no matter if you like them or not, they become the voice in your head when you get older. Mm-hmm. So if your parents is constantly telling you black men ain't shit, black men ain't shit, even if you don't realize that programming is working on the inside, until you go inside and do some personal inside work, personal development, you know, you won't even realize that's showing up in your everyday behavior.
But not all single mothers berate black men.
This is true.
You know, I just want to be clear on
Yes.
that, you know, because I don't want
That is
single
not what I'm
mothers
saying.
to feel like, okay, well, you know, we're attacking them, because not all, my mother didn't do that.
Right, and neither did mine.
You know, but I grew up in a single parent household for the majority of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I saw my mother doing everything, you know, handling the finances, handling anything that needed to be fixed around the house, like
Right.
changing a light bulb, you know, hooking up the electronics, you know, lugging groceries in. Like, pretty much that's what I saw, and that's what we did, because, you know, we were there and we would help her. So that's how, when I grew up, you know, I pretty much kept that same independent mindset where it's like, okay, well, you know, I want to be able to contribute as well, so that I'm not looked at as a burden, or that I'm not pulling my own weight.
And, you know, the reasoning behind it, like she said, she didn't want to be a burden, or she wanted to pull her own weight. You know, that's an ideal mindset, you know what I mean? But what I got to share now is the contrast between how me and Chanel grew up, right? I grew up in the Caribbean. And yes, my mother and my father were not together, but I had male presence in the home. I had uncles. I had a grandfather. You know, I had these male influences in the home. And my father wasn't an absentee father. He would still come and spend time with me, and we would go places and we would spend time together. And, you know, but I was living with my mother's side of the family, right? So the way that I saw things growing up, and I know people call this old school and backwards, but it worked. You know, the for the most part, the men did all the heavy stuff. Like, you know, if it required, like, you know, you to do a lot of heavy work, you know, physical labor, that's what the men did. And for the most part, the women in my household, you know, they nurtured the children. They cooked the food. You know what I mean? it's not demeaning to do those things. We've been conditioned to think that that's demeaning. It's nothing demeaning about it. We were functioning for the benefit of the family. No one person was really functioning for the benefit of the individual. And it was a huge difference in mindset. Right now, out of that same family I came out of, you know, every last one of my uncles and aunts are successful. You know, every one of them. And we still work together. I mean, we bump heads, you know, because that's what siblings do, but they bump heads. But in the big scale of things, they still function together and are still helping each other grow even further and further now, because that mindset of the family first, and like I said, it's not always perfect. You're gonna bump heads, but in the big scheme of things, the family comes first.
I think it's also playing on your strengths too, because I do know there are some strong households, male, female, where like we have friends of ours where the husband does the cooking.
Right.
Not because, it's something that,
Right.
It's
It's
like,
not something
why
that's
is he
only-
doing it?
Right.
But he loves to do it. And it just so happened that his wife, not so much. So in their household, he does most of the cooking and she does not. But at the same time, he's a man, he's a big guy. So he still do like heavy lifting and,
Right.
things like that. But that works for their household,
Right.
So it's not.
And that's common. That's okay. But
right,
they're
so
working
we're not
together.
saying. I guess if I'm hearing you right, you're not saying that that's the way it has to be.
Right.
Where the woman does all the
I'm
cooking.
not saying that's how it has
and
to
the men
be.
do all the heavy lifting, or
I was
et
just
cetera.
pointing out that was my experience.
Right.
And there are many different experiences out there. That was my experience. And looking at it objectively, at the results, I say it was successful. Right? I say it was successful. And now, when we got married, now she grew up with one set of ideals and I grew up with one set of ideals. And that first few years was a lot of friction trying to fit those Lego pieces together. You know what I mean? But look, if you want something good, it's not going to be easy. There's going to be some trials and tribulations where you're going to be like, damn. There was some times I couldn't stand my wife. Couldn't stand her.
I was just telling somebody
I
that the
really
other day.
didn't like her. Like, every time I saw her, suck my teeth in my head. Like, but you know what? At the same time, she was always my friend. So just like a friend, you don't always like your friend. But for some reason, we get the behavior. We get it with friendship. Like platonic friend, we get it. You know what? We just beefing right now. We be all right.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when it becomes an
Right.
intimate relationship,
People are quicker to throw in the towel.
People start pretending to be something different and see.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because let's say I have a girlfriend, a female friend, and we got into an argument or something. She might have did something that I don't like. I'm not gonna go talk bad about her to this person, that person, pretty much whoever listens. And I find that when it comes to intimate relationships, we tend to do that.
Right.
Women tend to do that. We'll talk very bad about our significant other, and it's like why do we do that?
See, I'm gonna bring it back because we going left field, but I'm gonna bring it back. You know what I mean? But in terms of that, you knew from the time, and anyone who knows me, from the time that me and my wife started dating, I had a rule. Like, what goes on between me and her ain't nobody else's business.
Right.
I don't care what level of friendship we are. What goes on between me and her ain't nobody else's business. And I kept it that way. And you know what? It kept a lot of that drama out of the relationship, because now I don't got to hear all this negative stuff.
Coming back to you.
Right? I don't have to do that, because they understand that a line was drawn in the beginning. Like, hey, look, when it comes to this part, that you're not welcome there to offer input in that particular thing. Now, who was I getting input? Who was allowed to give me input? People that I looked at as successful in the situation that I was in. People that might have been married for longer than me.
Right.
People that look like they may be happy. Of course, all appearances ain't true, but people that look like they might be getting it to work. those are the people who were qualified in my mind to give me suggestions and advice and stuff like
Right.
that, right? And if I didn't have them in my circle, I went out and found them. So no excuses. You know, I
I
took
think
responsibility.
and I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the lack of respect in our community. Like the lack of respect for the black man or the black woman. Because, there are some guys that would talk very bad about, their girlfriends, their wives, the mother of their children, whatever. Just like some women would do it. I was talking to a woman recently, and she said she was like in the grocery store, and she heard this man talking to his wife, like very, very nasty. And she's like, she wanted to get involved, but I guess it was a married couple, so she made the decision to kind of stay out of it. But she said she felt compelled to get involved because it's like, wow, like, why are you talking to your queen that way? And
see, this is where, and it ties back in. We got to bring it back to the topic, which is, how we are going to come up with solutions, right? Because right now they're throwing problems at us. They want to divide us. They want us arguing with each other. They see the movement that melanated people are making to try to come back together and be positive to each other and speak life into each other instead of death. The powers that be see that. They don't want that to happen. Okay, so we got to recognize that this is just another strategy to get us arguing with each other, right? Now, how do we avoid that situation? And who is going to, what is each party willing to do? Because you're going to have to do something different than we've been doing before. So people got to step up and own responsibility, male and female. What can the males and the females do individually to increase the amount of I guess personal responsibility?
So one of the things that I can think of, and I know a lot of people may not agree, is limit your sex partners or your sexual activity. When you're married, you tend to have a lot of sex. Whatever, you have sex. You're not going to have protected sex.
A lot of people won't agree, but
that's why I said or whatever. But you're going to have sex.
Right.
You're married. It's expected. That's what's going to happen. What's also expected is a pregnancy that may come out of that. You're less likely to have an abortion when you're in a marriage because you already know, like, okay, well, if we're having all this sex, this is what's going to happen. But when you're dating, you think you have the same mindset where you're like, well, I can still have all this sex that I have. Like if I was married, knowing there's a possibility that you can get pregnant or you can get someone pregnant. And then you think to yourself, well, okay, well, if I do it, then I'll just go down to the chop shop and get rid of it. Or I'll just throw her some money so she can get rid of it. But the personal responsibility, like you said, comes from, okay, well, if I have sex, the outcome is a child.
Baby. And for those people that tell me, oh, I'm pro-choice, so am I. But I'm also, like Dr. Boyce Watkins said, I'm also pro-responsibility, and I'm pro-responsibility first. Because if you're not responsible, you shouldn't even have the choice.
Because why do we tell our kids not to have sex?
Like, I tell my kids, if you're not responsible, I can't trust you to make that choice, so you can't engage in that activity. Because I don't think you're responsible enough. So when are we going to hold each other accountable? I got a great solution. Stop looking for the government to come in and be what we should be to each other, right? Peer pressure works. There are communities out here that certain behaviors are not acceptable. And just because that peer group in that community knows that certain behaviors are not acceptable, you will be surprised how low the numbers are of people that break from that tradition. Because peer pressure works. And as a community, when we start speaking life and speaking guidance into people and letting them and not being afraid to let people know when what you're doing is not serving the community, because it has to be bigger than the individual, right? What you're doing is not serving the community. What you're doing is hurting the community. You're hurting everyone that you see every day, and they know that. And they're going to feel the same way about you. And they're going to tell you, why are you hurting us as a community?
Right.
You're going to change your behavior, or you're going to get out of that community and go somewhere else. And it happens all the time. The Amish, they do it. They give their children a choice at a certain age if they want to stay or go. Some of them go. Most of them that go come back. Why is that? You know, if you look in
because it's so far off from what they grew up with,
Correct.
with knowing that they go right back to their foundation.
We create our cultures. We have that power, not anybody else. Me and my wife, we've created a culture in our home that promotes open-mindedness, promotes effective communication. It promotes sharing and speaking on things that you may like or you may not like. You know, offer your opinion. Your opinion is valuable. You understand? Because you are part of the group, the family, the group unit. You have a say-so because it's about the bigger picture. It's bigger than just you as an individual. And when we switched over to that mindset, I see we get a lot more positive results from not just the children, but from each other, because now we're not in a me mindset. We're in a mindset where we're looking at a vision that's bigger than us. You know, it may start as a man and woman getting married. Now the vision is bigger than each individual. Now they're a married couple, and then they get a couple kids. Now they have a married family. You know what I mean? There was a family before, but now they're a married family with kids. The vision becomes a little bigger. You get a couple of those in one neighborhood, you know, speaking the way that we speak and talking about the topics that we find important.
Right.
Guess what? You have created a community, right? Inside of that community now, you can create norms. What's acceptable and what's not acceptable, because it's practiced in every household.
Right.
And now a child from home A, even if they're at home C, you know, there's certain things that they wouldn't even think to do because it's against the norms.
Right.
We have to make it now again where we promote man-woman relationships that are more than just superficial booty calls. We gotta be ready to go in for the long haul.
Yeah, because I feel like now we're in a culture where it's like it's okay to just have all this like random.
It's the norm.
Sex.
It's the norm.
Yeah.
And I'm not judging, but that's where we are. You have to know where you are to know where you want to go.
Right. Right. It's no judgment, but in that comes
all of these consequences.
I don't even want to say unplanned pregnancies, because every time you have sex, it's the possibility that you can get pregnant.
Right. Unless you got like some condition, you know, or you had a procedure done or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
right.
You understand that that's part of the risk you're taking, right? Like when my mom told me not to go to a party when I was a teenager, I had to weigh the risk. Okay, am I going to get that butt whooping when I come home? Yeah, because I'm going to take that butt whooping because it was more fun at that party, and the butt whooping only going to last for a little bit, but, you know.
And also, too, don't fall into the trap of, oh my gosh, what is it? When they, vasectomies?
Vasectomies.
Or hysterectomies and, you know, all these things.
Well, hysterectomy is a big one.
Right, but some women will go that extreme.
Yeah.
You know, when they're young, they're like, please, I don't want to have kids. I don't want to have kids. And then they go do something drastic. And then maybe 10 years down the road, they might meet a guy that, you know, they really feeling, they really love. Their lifestyle changes from where they were 10 years ago. And now they decide, you know what, I do want to have kids. But 10 years ago, you made such a drastic decision to get rid of your lady parts that now you can't reverse it.
And, you know, the powers that be know they follow certain rules. And one of their rules is never waste a good crisis. Never waste a good crisis. What's that mean in pertaining to what we're talking about? Well, I'll tell you exactly what it means, right? Me personally, I don't believe that these laws and this situation in Alabama, I don't think we should be the loudest voice in the room screaming and hollering about it, because we weren't the primary target of this law. I don't believe that. If you do a little bit of research, family, do a little bit of research. Research the white American birth rate in the last 2 years. It has been negative. It may be longer than that, but I know in the last 2 years it's been negative. And it's a proven fact that every culture in the world ever that we know of that ever went into a negative birth rate never recovered. Let that sink in. And there are more and more, you wonder why people are panicking about Hispanics coming in from the border. Well, that's melanin that's coming in. Black people, we're having more babies. That's melanin that's coming in. And guess what? White folks are having less and less babies. So much so that right now they cannot effectively repopulate. They're in a negative descent. And every living group that has gone into negative birth rate go extinct. So, I mean, that sounds scary, but this is to stop white women from having abortions, in my opinion. Not black people.
That's a good point. And the flip side to that also can be a way to try to control the black community as well.
Correct.
Think about it. If you make a law that says abortion is illegal, what are people going to start doing? They're going to run to get on birth control now in the black community.
Mm-hmm.
Men or women are going to do procedures where now they cannot have kids anymore.
And I just heard them talking about a new male birth control.
Yes, I saw that on Facebook.
You really want to take something to lower your sperm count?
So now what does that do in the long run? Now it decreases our birth rate.
And give them an opportunity
to catch up.
To try to balance those scales.
Yes.
But right now, if it's nature to decide, which right now I don't think we have the technology to go against nature in that level yet. Right? But don't be surprised if they're working on it, right? But the Caucasian right now is I believe it's in panic mode. Not all of them, the powers that be, the ones that control the control system of white supremacy, you know, though they know that drastic changes have to be made. Is it a coincidence that it's looking like we're about to go into major war conflicts? Do you know what Agenda 21 was, where they talked about we need to decrease the population by about 60% or more?
I don't remember the numbers.
Even I think well, I don't want to say that until I verify, but there's a very successful businessman that even talked about it and agreed that yes, he's a billionaire, and he agreed that yes, the world's population does need to come down. Agenda 21, Google it, that phrase, and you'll learn a lot. Okay, so. With all these wars coming up and the draft being changed so that now everyone is eligible to be drafted. It doesn't matter what you are now. It is male, female, homosexual, straight, college student. It doesn't matter. You're going to get drafted this time around. So we have all these worldwide conflicts lining up that are going to need meat for the meat grinder.
I remember once upon a time, it was normal to have big families.
Correct.
It was like, and if you had like only one child or no kids,
they thought something was wrong with you.
Right.
Like my
But it was acceptable to have big families
Yes.
for men and women to have, lots of kids.
Yes.
When I tell people that we're on baby number 4, they're like, "Oh wow."
They act like you just did something terrible, like
Which
you
is funny
spit on a
because
cross or something.
when I
I'm
was
like,
pregnant with baby
calm
number
down.
3, they were like, "Oh wow, that's so great." And now they're like, "Oh wow."
Like, you're not gonna stop?
And it's like, it's only one more than the 3, but
Right.
For some reason, society told us 3 is okay, 4 is too many.
But you got to understand that this is done. They see bigger families. There are advantages and there are disadvantages.
Right.
The disadvantages may come when the children are very young. As those children get older and they're able to contribute to building the wealth of the family, you have a serious advantage over everyone else.
Right.
So they may not want to explain that. Now, then that will not work if you're seeking jobs. It doesn't work that well.
Right.
Right. If your primary goal and your
primary
metric
income.
of success is to get a job, that may not work well for you.
Because your income is limited.
It's very limited on how far you can go. But if you're building a business, if you're building generational wealth, right? When those children come of age and see this is what you do, you're teaching them along the way. They're watching you, you're talking with them, and you're educating them. And like I can't imagine making a decision to not have one of my children that are here today. Because they're all so different in their own way, and they bring value in their own way.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there are a lot of people. There are a lot of black people that can't have children. You know what I mean? That would love to adopt your unplanned baby.
Right.
You know, but then I hear selfish responses. So you mean a woman is supposed to let that baby drain on her body for 9 months? Who allowed that to happen? Like, why are you now thinking so selfish after the
To
fact?
say drain on her body for 9 months is such an ugly phrase.
But I've seen these comments online, and I wonder if are these
Instead-
government trolls or are these real people? 'Cause-
Instead, you know how I look at it as, let's say, you know, I got pregnant and it was a pregnancy that I didn't plan for, so I didn't want it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know someone, or I know of someone who cannot have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm able to give them something
Give
that
them
they
life.
couldn't give themselves. And in turn, that person will be forever grateful to me and the small sacrifice that I made.
Community.
Right. It's about community.
How many times did you hear back in the days, right?
But if you were getting paid to be a surrogate,
Right.
people would
Then
jump
that's
on that.
okay. That's okay.
Because, you know, people get paid to be a surrogate all the time and they're like, yeah. But when it comes to doing it from like generosity, like just to do it just to help someone, now it's like, oh, what is it? So the child is draining on my body.
The child is draining and destroying, and then she got to go get lipo afterwards. I've seen these comments, and I'm really struggling to accept that these are real people making those comments that really believe that, because we also got to be open-minded enough to know that the powers that be are in our chat rooms. They're in our threads. They show up to cause disruption and to push.
They just change your profile picture.
Right, and to push their narratives. So you can't respond and react to every silly thing you see that wants to get you triggered. That's what they want. They want you to continually act emotionally.
Right.
This is not an emotional thing, family. This is a very intellectual thing, and we have the power to change this discussion inside of our own homes, inside of our own communities. Like, lastly, one of the things that we finished talking about in the car, and you get so many crazy distractions from these trolls, right? Because their job is to distract away from the message. What I'm going to do now is to make a comparison between the Hasidic Jews community and something that we can do. There's nothing anti-Semitic about that, because, there's nothing anti-Semitic about that. But the goal is, every time we start making these comparisons, they want to throw that label out there to scare us away from having these conversations, okay? Now, if the government can make laws except concerning religion, this is all the way I put things together in my head, then the Hasidic Jewish community is genius in the sense that they have created a culture that benefits their people and wrapped it in religion. Like, so now the government can't tell them certain things. If they don't want to get these vaccines, the government can't go against their religion, right? But why can they go after your kids? Well, guess what? You don't have a religion. So, that's just one of the crazy outside the box ways I was thinking.
Right.
We could create a moral, a melanated moral code, a community code of sorts.
Right, and call it religion.
And then label that religion and live by those codes and standards and principles that will promote growth and positivity in our communities. We use the systems that are available.
Which will stop the government from coming in and dictating how we should govern ourselves.
I believe the Nation of Islam has successfully done just that.
Yes, I agree.
I believe, and I love the work that they do. And if you notice recently,
The Muslim community is starting to do it too.
if you notice recently, Facebook banned the Minister Louis Farrakhan. I don't know, maybe my memory's a little bit foggy, but I can't remember the time where a Nation of Islam person murdered someone and it was in the news. I just can't remember that. But for some reason, they consider what he's talking about dangerous, right? So I guess maybe what I'm talking about is dangerous too, if you're looking at it from the perspective as if the melanated class wakes up, then that may be dangerous for us in terms
Because
of
it's going against the grain.
in terms of us maintaining the status quo. That may be dangerous. Words are very important. I like to ask questions. So if you just throw out random stuff, I'm gonna ask you I'm gonna ask you questions so that you got to defend that perspective, or at least explain it. And if you don't want to do that, then you're just a troll. All right. But on that note, we may do a part 2. It's a lot that we didn't even touch on.
Yeah, drop us comments.
Drop us a comment if you want to see a
Email
part
us.
2. Email us.
Or just tell us your thoughts.
Where would they email us?
melanateduniverse98@gmail.
Okay, melanateduniverse98@gmail. Make sure, family, that you like, subscribe, and share.
Our
Like,
YouTube.
subscribe, and share. We want to bring the whole family into this discussion, all right?
And also follow, also follow us on We Say What They Can't platform.
Correct.
So that you can see our videos, and you just look on the Melanated Universe.
All right.
To find us.
Stay productive. Let your melanin get popping in all this beautiful sunshine. And we will talk to you next time.
Yes, absolutely.
Peace.